Hi, I'm Patricia Greenberg, and this is Eat Well, Live Well, Age Well, where we talk about all things aging well. My guest today is Grace Sammon. She's an entrepreneur, educator, speaker, and author. She is utilizing skills built up over decades as she reinvents herself with her award-winning fourth book and debut novel, The Eves, as well as with a return to one of her early loves, radio. Welcome, Grace. Here's your book.
Oh, Patricia, thank you for having me. I love what you do with your show. So I'm really honored to be able to be here.
Thank you. We're going to get to everything in the next half hour, but I wanted to start out talking to you about your reinvention, your third act, as we call it. You wrote a novel, you host a show called The Storytellers and Launchpad. That's a really busy schedule.
Well, I'm not sure it's as busy as yours, but it is busy. And I am relishing every minute of it. There's just a vibrance and a vitality that I have, and sometimes some real exhaustion as well. But I'm just loving being still creative and contributing.
Storytelling is what we know now is the key to opening up our minds and our hearts to what's out in the world. In my work, I do a lot of rote scientific, what's good for you as you get older, what you can do to stay healthy. And I try to intersperse some fun things about getting older, and it's fun, but it's really the communication in life is to tell stories. And what people forget is that in our history before television, we had radio and families would gather around. This is not that long ago. This is the 40s and 50s, where people would sit around and listen to stories on the radio or listen to mom read you a book, or people would transcribe information, not on a quick text or even the telephone or the internet. You'd have to walk over to somebody and tell them a story.
Storytelling for me is key. So The Eves is my fourth book. Mm-hmm. The first three were in the area of education. But even when I'm trying to do a big data-driven, how do we change high schools across America? What are our data points? How do we look at a variety of data? For me, it was always what made the books interesting was to pick out an individual teacher and carry that teacher's story or that student's story or that community's story. So whether I was working in inner city Detroit or on tribal lands, it was very important for me to tell the story because that's what connects us, across color lines, across age lines, across gender lines. It's the ability to hear each other's stories. And I think that hearing each other's stories is so important. The subtitle of The Eves is when our stories are told, everything changes. And so I couldn't agree with you more. Storytelling is, at our most primitive, it was handprints on the wall, but today it's still how do we leave our mark on the world?
So tell us about your storytelling show.
That came about in the most lovely way, and you would appreciate it because the woman who owned this radio station, her name was Dr. Gail Carson, 84 years old, all of 4'8", and she owned Spunky Old Broad Radio, SOB Radio. And she delighted in her moniker was, I'm a spunky old broad, are you? And she interviewed me on her show. We did a double episode. We did over an hour together. And she called me the next day and she said, Grace, you have to have your own radio show. And I said, I can't do that, Gail. I'm done. And she said, have you listened to your own book? Have you listened to the message in your book is that we are never done. And so you're not done, Grace. You need to have your own radio show. She said, whatever you want it to be. I decided it should be storytelling, which is how people leave their mark on the world through the art of story. And I just finished my 50th episode. We did our first season. We start season 2 in August. I am booked through the start of the next year. Mostly I interview authors, but I've had Nobel Peace Prize winners and scientists. And it's how do we leave our mark? And most of us leave a story, even if it's not in the shape of a novel.
Now, how do you, the nuts and bolts is that, people come in and they tell you about what they do, probably why they do it. They're snippets of people's lives. really have two questions for you is, how do you think this is changing the landscape of how we communicate? And do you think it's for the better?
The podcast, radio show,
Oh, yeah, all of
venue,
it.
you mean?
Again, it used to be that, people had the patience to sit in front of a movie for 2 hours or a television interview or sit and listen to the radio for long periods of time. But now it's getting shorter and shorter because people's attention span's not there. Plus, media is so saturated and overwhelming. Those of us who are doing shows realize we have to do it a little bit shorter or we're not going to keep our audience. So I just want to know how you think that's affecting the landscape.
I think you're right on. And sometimes, my initial format was 30 minutes and then the station suggested 20. They would love me to get to 15. And if I want to have a guest longer, to do a double episode.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So I'm moving to try to do that, but there are just some guests. I interviewed the fabulous Amy Ferris several weeks ago, and Amy from Story Summit. She wrote the amazing off-Broadway play called Marrying George Clooney. She is just a force. I think we went 35 minutes. So we do have the ability to do that. On my show, I always want to strike a balance between that debut author who really wants a platform for, I've never been on a podcast, to, the Amy Ferris's, the Nobel Peace Prize winners, et cetera. So I want to strike that balance. I've had New York Times and USA Today bestsellers. So I want to create a place for that. For me, the difference is I am now on Authors on the Air Global Radio Network.
Okay.
What that has provided me is we are in 153 countries. I forget, I looked at our stats on the dashboard the other day, and I'm very bad at numbers. So it was either 16.8 thousand people have seen us in the last 28 days or 18.6. So I have some dyslexia going on there. So for me, I also like being part of a network. Even though in some places it looks like a podcast, I like being part of that broader network, not only because we get a broader audience, in my opinion, but also the network gets pitched with, this publishing house has just come out with this book. So would you interview the person? So in some ways my life is easier because I get fed.
People come to you. Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we have a couple things going on here is you have the Author Talk Network, and there's a Facebook group that you host called Bookish Road Trip. So you want to tell us about those two things? And
so many things. So the radio station is Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. We talked about that with Storytellers.
Yes.
And that's where we're going to be launching my new radio show, which will come on in addition to Storytellers in August, called Launchpad. But Authors on the Air Global Radio Network is that. Then there's Author Talk Network, which we were in the middle of the pandemic. You know what it's like to launch a book in the middle of a pandemic.
It's impossible.
Very difficult. So I reached out to some authors that I had met across social media and said, why don't we come together to collaborate, to communicate, to support each other? And that has been a very interesting phenomena for me. Even though I've started 4 businesses, I'm very much a throw spaghetti against the wall kind of girl and see if it works. So now we opened in November. We did a soft launch in November. We did a hard launch in January. We have an ebook coming out. We have 17 different panels, everything from how to be a ghostwriter to how to market your book. So we have 17 different panels that we do, and different groups will invite us to be part of a conference. So that's been very, very rewarding. A lot of this I met through people at Bookish Road Trip. Bookish Road Trip started out as a Facebook group about 1.5 years ago. And now we have an Instagram, we have a website, we do a blog, we do programming throughout the month. I'm the director of membership there. In January, we had 1,600 members. We're just under 4,000 members now. And it's just my happy place on social media. It's a great place to get author support, but if you are a reader, it's a great place to connect with books that you like and other readers on topics, and traveling.
We have so much more to talk about, but quickly, can you tell us where people can find your podcast?
You can find the easiest place to find everything is just to go to my website, which is Sammon, spelled Sammon. And if you're watching this, you can see it at the bottom of the screen. So it's Grace Sammon. Sounds like the fish, but not.
Yeah.
.net.
Okay.
And there you'll see all of my storyteller episodes. There'll be information on Author Talk Network and how to get in touch with us around that. But you can also go to Authors on the Air Global Radio Network and watch all of the episodes there as well. I'm active on Facebook and on Instagram and always post there as well.
Okay, I'm just encouraging everybody to go to gracesammon.net, and you can also go to my website, eatwell-live-well-age-well.com, and I'll forward the information to you. You know, Grace, I want to get into now, because I'm like one of these people that goes around telling everybody how old I am and what I'm doing. And I'm 61. I am starting a new book. As a kid, I never in a million years thought I'd be doing any of the things I was doing. I was a heavy, unathletic child. I grew up, and in my 30s, I started running, and I ran 20 marathons and 110 half marathons.
Oh my goodness.
I've written 4 books, and I'm going on my 5th, and traveled all over the world and did things I never in a million years imagined I would. But then there's things in my life that didn't work out the way that I wanted or I had imagined. And I've learned, Grace, there's not good or bad decisions. They're just decisions. And you find out later on how it affects your life. And rather than saying good or bad, I like to say, that's how it affected my life at the time, and this is where we are today. So I am calling upon you to talk to me about, to debunk these assumptions that we have about getting old. I'm too old to write a book. It won't be relevant to today's culture. I have to give up on my dream. What do we say to people that have a book in them, or have a screenplay, or watch TV, just like a minority kid used to look at TV and say, there's nobody there that I look like. Now there's older people saying, I want things, access to TV, movie, radios, books that speak to me in my age group. You know, what do you say to those people?
Oh, I think you are so spot on. One of the things I do love about my book, and people like about my book, is my youngest character is 15. My oldest is 94. Most of the characters are in their 70s. So I think that has a lot of relatability to people. I am 68. When I was 66, I thought I was pretty much done. You know, it was tennis twice a week, pickleball twice a week, book club, and those things. And I did do a lot of volunteering. So for me, volunteering has always been something that helps give my life meaning. I worked with hospice, and I worked with abused kids. So that was very important. But I thought my work life was done. And when I think of, as you must, the things I have learned just since the pandemic, I didn't want to be on social media. I didn't know how to delete a post that I had posted. What were those little 3 dots up in the corner? I didn't know what they were. I knew nothing about, even though I had been traditionally published with 3 books, I knew nothing about the world of novels. So my exponential learning about, a good example is how you do your show and I do my show. How do we edit it? How do we upload it to the various channels? I think as long as we keep learning, for me, that's always the key. I love to be able to say, I learned this today, or I failed at this today. So for me right now, anything is possible. I was given some very good advice when I wrote this last book. So for those who are interested in the screenplay or the book, I'm really going to challenge them to ask themselves the reason why, like 5 times. Why do you want to write your book? Well, I really think it's a great book. Why do you think it's a great book? Well, you know, it really deals with a very unspoken part of American society, women transitioning as they age. Well, why is that important? So my publisher asked me that over and over, and I kept on saying, well, because I just think it's a good story. But where the why for me has to come in is, when will you be satisfied? What is success? For me, success was the minute that book was given birth in the world. And now success for me is, you know, that it rates at 4.7 stars across Goodreads, BookBub, and all of those. So that's very gratifying. But for me, right, so yes, I've met that goal. I never thought I'd have 1 radio show, let alone 2. So it's that throwing the spaghetti against the wall. It's being ready to open a door. And sometimes you have to open that door for yourself. I have some friends now who say, how can you be so busy? How can you be doing these things? And right now, I had this conversation with my husband the other night. I don't know, quite honestly, what I would do if I wasn't doing them.
Right.
So we all have to find meaning and purpose. And I think that is the secret to aging, learning something every day. And it might be challenging yourself to knit. I know you're an avid knitter. So what are those things that bring us joy, and how do we find them?
Grace, how is your support network? I know one of the things that it's a staggering statistic, and I have already done several shows on loneliness. I've brought in the experts because it is so scary to me that 1 in 5 seniors live alone without any support, and it's growing exponentially as our population ages. So I'm not going to ask you to come up with the answers, but one thing that I hope we can all do collectively, I say women over 50, but now I'm really reaching out to people in their 60s and 70s who are vital in doing things, is to try to maybe find somebody the same way that you'd adopt a pet or reach out to a child who needs help. You were in education. I think we need to collectively reach out to seniors who you may know may just need a phone call once a week or somebody to go. I mean, the statistics are frightening.
They're staggering, as you said. And there's
Right.
one of the things that prompted me to write my novel was there's a Bette Midler song called Hello in There, Hello. And it's the story of this older woman, and she's married, and she says, me and my husband, we sit on the back porch, we don't talk much anymore. But she has this very poignant line for me, and it says, and when you pass us on the street sometime and you see our hollow ancient eye, don't you stop and stare as if you didn't care. Say hello in there, hello.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be, Patricia, that simple. At the grocery store, and you see somebody, and it doesn't have to be older, but that's our focus.
Right.
It could be anybody.
Could be anybody that needs a little something. Right.
Make that connection. Oh, I haven't tried that roast beef. Is it good? Oh, that cupcake looks fabulous. And you're going to know what's in their shopping cart, right? When they've got the one cupcake, or they've got, they're not buying for a family. So I think if we just all notice and pay attention more and reach out and say hello in there, hello.
Right. So I get back to, I also think that something I want to encourage people, because we're talking about storytelling and writing as our focus today. And then just a quick recap. I'm Patricia Greenberg. You're listening to Eat Well, Live Well, Age Well. My guest today is Grace Sammon. You can get her at Grace Sammon, SAMMON.net. And she's an author, radio show host, and advocate for aging well, like myself, being the best you can be at any age. What about, Grace, in your work? Now, we hear, and I belong to some writing groups and I've written books. Writing is such a solitary lot in life, and it's lonely and it's so hard. I always say, find a support group. And my book club alone, we always laugh. It's a group of girls that I grew up with, and we talk about the book for 5 or 10 minutes, and then we talk about our life for the next hour. But we do walk away with a life lesson from the book if we can. But again, it's that surrounding yourself. All you need is one best friend. All you need is one person that you can reach out to. So how do you manage your social media, your writing, your radio? You need a village, Grace.
Well, and I think I have several. Bookish Road Trip is my first village.
Okay.
I'm one of the administrators there. There are 9 of us who have very specific roles. So we have 3 different newsletters, and we have quarterly meetings. And it's not at all what I thought a Facebook group would be. We have a schedule of who posts which days. We're tons of communication back and forth, but we also use each other. For a friend of mine, one of my friends is coming out with another novel, and she said, can you help me with titles? Let's banter titles around. If I'm writing an article, I can send it to Barb Conry, for example. She's a USA Today bestseller. I can say, Barb, there's something off about this, and she'll read it and she'll give me feedback. So I think writing groups are very important. I'm a member of Women's Fiction Writer Association of America, WFWA. And that's an amazing group. You can just go on there and post something that says, I need to know how blood splatter would go if somebody was shot from above,
Right,
if you're a mystery
right.
writer,
Mhm.
or anything. I'm looking for an agent and I haven't found one. So I couldn't agree with you more. Writing communities are very, very important. And I don't know, maybe I'm not writing enough right now, but I never feel lonely.
Good. That's very good to hear. I don't feel alone in my process either. And part of it is I think that when you ask yourself, and I love what you said, is why am I writing this book? And break it down to each step. Why am I writing it? Why is it important? Why does this need to be heard? But Grace, I want to say basically also, if you're just writing to get it out and put it in a diary and it doesn't get published, that's okay too. That doesn't make you a failure. It's just another
Absolutely.
aspect of your life that you're expanding and growing, and maybe just exploring that you wrote it. I'm stunned when I hear authors say, I've got a couple of manuscripts on my desk and I didn't do anything with them. And I'd be like, call the publisher. But that's that in itself. That's an accomplishment, is they got it out
Absolutely.
and they decided not to do anything with it.
And I think today you can be as proud of an independently published book
Mhm.
as if,
Yes,
Random House picked it up.
absolutely.
Certainly there's a different cachet, but you've written it, it's out there, and nobody asks you who published your book.
Right, right.
I
It's a whole
guarantee you that.
different world now. Grace, moving on, because this is such a wonderful conversation. What do you have coming up next? What are you looking forward to in your future? Both short term and
Oh,
long term.
short term, I'm going on vacation and I desperately need one with my wonderful husband. So that'll be short term. Then when I come back, there's going to be, I've pitched 3 books linked to my new radio show. My new radio show is going to be called Launchpad, and it celebrates debut books and the authors that created them. We're going to tie a book series to that. There's 3 books: the countdown to writing your book, the countdown to publishing your book, and the countdown to marketing your book. So that'll be a 3-book series. We're coming out with the ebook, which I think may be out as early as this month, but certainly by July,
Okay.
which is called Sharp Tips for Exceptional Writing. I've got a draft for, not a draft, that's a lie. I've got snippets of my next novel, which we'll be developing. And then Launchpad takes off in August. And so lots more. And you know what? The best part is I don't know what else is next.
And you're looking forward to not knowing. I mean, you're looking forward to a future and you don't have to know everything that's going to happen. Grace, what do you like about getting older?
Oh, I think it's that I'm much more gentle with myself. I'm more gentle with myself. I'm more comfortable in my skin. You talked about being the fat teenager. I think that when we're young, first of all, I think when we're younger, we don't know who we are. I would tell everybody that I was a loser all through high school. There were the popular kids and there were the really nerdy kids. I was and shows how we judged kids then, right? And I
Right.
was the layer right above the really nerdy kids, which meant I knew I wasn't really a nerd, but I was a loser.
Right.
I was
Right.
that L7.
Right. Right.
But
Right. Mhm.
yes, but let's talk about the disconnect. I was president of the drama club. I was president of Future Teachers of America. I was president of Future Business Leaders of America.
And to me,
I
that's a
was,
superstar. That's superstar behavior, Grace.
but I didn't know that. I was just doing the good, in
Yeah.
my case, Catholic girls' school
Yeah.
thing. And those are largely popularity contests. I mean, I
Hmm.
certainly did the work, but I don't feel as disconnected. I think I'm more comfortable in my skin, more comfortable with saying, I'm really good at this and I'm really not good at this. This
Hmm.
is how I have to get better. I also think that while I do still have judgments around some behaviors, I'm a lot less judgmental. I'm much more compassionate toward, I take a step back. If somebody's really obnoxious to me in the grocery store or someplace, I no longer think they're a horrible human being. I can step back and say,
Right.
oh, I wonder what was going on there. So I'd like that's it.
Yeah.
I'd still love that body that I used to have, but I'm even becoming accepting of that.
Yeah, yeah. And just loving yourself is really, I think, a real key way to go. Grace, it's been so delightful to talk to you. In closing, I want to thank you so much for your insight, your wisdom, your advice to all of us who want to thrive in our later years. And I wish you the best with everything you have going forward. And I'd like you to come back again sometime so we can talk. And thank you all for listening to Eat Well, Live Well, Age Well. Please subscribe here on my channel at YouTube at Patricia Greenberg, the Fitness Gourmet, and reach out to Grace at Grace Sammon, GraceSammon.net, and continue in the engaging discussions with both of us. Grace, thank you so, so much.
What a privilege. Continue to thrive. Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you. Thank you.